A long-lost interview with Audrey Hepburn that shattered her perfect picture was found in 1978. She finally told everyone what she had done. The Nazi ties of her parents, and her work for the resistance as a child. The shocking truth about her relationship with JFK, as well as the real reason she quit Hollywood when she was at the height of her fame. The most popular movie star has a dark past that we're going to reveal today. Her birthday is May 4th, 1929, and she was born in Ixelles, Brussels, Belgium. Aubrey Kathleen Rustin was her full name. Her father was a banker with roots in both Britain and Austria. Her mother was from a wealthy family in the Netherlands. In the 1930s, Audrey's parents both backed Nazi ideas, which was a surprise. In 1935, her mother met Adolf Hitler and wrote stories that were nice about him. This bad part of Audrey's family history would worry her for a long time. In time, her dad changed their last name to Hepburn, saying they were linked to high-class Scots. The truth was different, but it made Audrey's life more interesting. In her early years, Audrey had a hard time. They almost died as babies from whooping cough. Her heart stopped for a short time, but her mom wouldn't call an ambulance. Instead, she hid Audrey to wake her up. Audrey might have become stronger because of this scary event. Audrey's childhood was rough because her family moved around a lot. She had lived in Brussels, London, and The Hague by the time she was 5. She learned about the world by traveling, but she also felt like she didn't belong. But Audrey learned to speak a lot of languages during this time. She would use this skill to become a famous movie star around the world. Audrey's parents split up when she was 6 years old. Her dad left the family without telling them why. Audrey's mom told her that her dad had left for a trip and wouldn't be back. This made Audrey, who was young, feel lost and sad. Every day, she wrote letters to her dad, but they were never sent because no one knew where he was. Audrey said that this was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. She also thought back to hearing her mom cry at night, which made her feel even worse about being alone and sad. When Audrey was 9 years old, she was sent to an English boarding school. She fell in love with dance after taking ballet classes there. She wanted to be a dancer so badly. It wasn't long before things got rough for her in England. As World War II broke out in 1939, her mother moved the family back to the Netherlands because she thought it would be safer there. Sadly, this choice put them right in the middle of Nazi-controlled Europe. Nazis took over the Netherlands on May 10th, 1940, when Audrey Hepburn was only 11 years old. She lost all of the comfort in her life. Everything became scary and dangerous all of a sudden. For his part in the resistance, Otto van Limburg-Stierum, her uncle, was killed by the Nazis in 1942. Audrey will never look at the world the same way again after this event. There was more trouble every day in Velp, where her family moved. Food supplies stopped in January 1945, and the harsh winter made things even worse. Audrey's family used to be very rich, but now they have to wait in line for food. A lot of the time, there was nothing left to buy. At night, bombs fell, and during the day, they hid in basements to avoid fighter planes. As the disease spread, Audrey and everyone else in Velp had to get painful shots to stay healthy. People went through a lot of pain during the hunger winter of 1944 to 1945. It was almost hard to find food. Sometimes, people in the Netherlands only ate 400 calories a day. Their family ran out of food and started to eat tulip bulbs, which were tough to swallow and not very healthy. They looked for weeds to eat when those ran out. Audrey was only 15 years old when she got really weak. Lack of food caused her to get anemia and swell up in painful ways. She wasn't getting enough food, so she couldn't dance anymore, even though she loved it. Her family stayed in the basement to stay warm because their house didn't have heat. These months left her mentally and physically scarred for life. Even with all of this, Audrey showed a lot of courage. When she was 15, she joined the Dutch front line. She did dangerous things for Dr. Hendrik while they worked together. She danced in hidden ballet shows to help people who were hiding. People in the shows were so quiet that they couldn't even clap, because they were afraid of getting caught. Audrey also brought hidden newspapers to people in the resistance. She put the papers in her socks and rode her bike through the country, always putting her life at risk. She had to hide from the Nazis one day and send a message to a British pilot. She ran into Nazi cops on her way back. She quickly came up with a plan. She would pick flowers and give them to the troops while they looked over her papers. She was able to save herself quickly. Audrey will always remember the fight. She was hungry as a teen, and it changed her health forever. Because of what she went through in the war, she stayed very thin her whole life. Also, she had anemia, which made her weak and tired. After eating things like grass and flower bulbs, her stomach never felt the same again. Some people think that the poor diet she had made her later illness worse. But there's no guarantee of that. It's clear that these years changed Audrey. Audrey's whole life changed in 1951. The famous author Colette saw her while she was shooting a small movie in France called Monte Carlo Baby. Colette was trying to find someone to play Gigi in her NYC play. She knew right away that Audrey was the right person for her when she saw her. Because Audrey had never done it before, she was scared to act on stage. She even told Colette she didn't think she could act. But Colette had faith in her and talked her into playing the part. Audrey did lots of work to get ready for Gigi. She practiced all the time and learned her lines while traveling to New York. She had trouble expressing her voice at first, and the practices were hard. But Audrey charmed everyone on the first night. She was called charming and captivating by critics. The play was a big hit. It was put on more than 200 times. Audrey's name was written in lights above the theater, which is a pretty rare honor for someone who is new. Her big break came with Roman Holiday in 1953, and her story is like pure magic. She wasn't even meant to play princess, and it was made for Elizabeth Taylor at first. Things changed, though, after William Wyler saw Audrey's screen test. She thought her trip to Pinewood Studios on September 18, 1951, was just another interview. Wyler was amazed by her natural beauty as he watched from afar in Hollywood. He kept the cameras running even after the test was over. He asked her about her life during World War II and was so impressed by how honest and likable Audrey was that he chose her for the part. Not everyone agreed with what he did. The people at Paramount were afraid to put someone no one had heard of in such a big movie, especially since it cost $1.5 million to make. Wyler had faith in Audrey, though. He told them, "She's going to be famous." He was right. Roman Holiday was a huge hit when it came out on August 27, 1953, making $12 million, which was a lot of money back then. Marilyn Monroe and other Hollywood stars of the time were known for their curves and glamour, while Audrey's style was fresh and classy. Audrey added something new to the movie that people will remember. The way she played Princess and was so real that Paramount had to make a deal with the British government. They did not want people to think that the figure was based on Princess Margaret or the British royal family. It was also the first American movie to be shot completely in Italy, which made history. It wasn't easy to film in Rome, but it made everything feel real. They spent $700,000 more than planned, but the chance paid off. The movie Roman Holiday was so popular that it led to Hollywood movies being made in Rome. The press called this Hollywood on the Tiber. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1954 for her role in Roman Holiday. She was 24 years old, making her one of the youngest people to ever win that award. The event on March 25, 1954, was special because Audrey couldn't go from Los Angeles. She was on Broadway in New York in the play Undine. The broadcast showed her in a simple white Givenchy dress and stage makeup that she had been wearing all day. She was so shocked when her name was called that she later said, "I didn't know what to do." She even gave the host, Jean Hirschholt, a kiss on the lips, a time that everyone still talks about. Something funny took place that night. Audrey was almost robbed of her Oscar. Someone found it before she left, so she didn't leave it in the bathroom by chance. People loved telling sweet stories about her because of this little accident. There was more to Audrey's Oscar win than just her. It showed how much Gregory Peck believed in her. Peck demanded that Audrey's name be written next to his above the movie's title, even though he was already a big star. He also said she would win the Oscar, which she did. The next week, on March 28, 1954, Audrey won a Tony Award for her role in Undine. This made her one of the few people who had ever won both an Oscar and a Tony in the same week. Sabrina, her next big movie, came out in 1954, a little more than a year after Roman Holiday. With a script by Billy Wilder, it showed Audrey in a new light. Sabrina was her name, and she was the daughter of a driver who was stuck between two rich brothers, Humphrey Bogart and William Holden. It wasn't easy to make the movie. Bogart, who was a lot older than Audrey, was mean to her and often said bad things about how she was acting. Her skill and charm shone through, though. Because of how well she did, she was nominated for a second Oscar. A very important thing in Audrey's life began with Sabrina, her relationship with the French designer Hubert de Givenchy. Audrey wouldn't wear the standard costumes from the studio for the movie. She insisted on wearing Givenchy's designs instead. This made things tense because Edith Head, who designed the costumes for the company, wanted all the credit. The movie won an Oscar for Best Costume Design in the end, but most people knew that Givenchy was responsible for the most striking looks. It was from there that Audrey and Givenchy became friends. He made clothes for her daily life, as well as clothes for her movies. The well-known little black dress she wore in 1961's Breakfast at Tiffany's was something he made. It was so well known that it sold at sale years later for $923,187. Audrey said Givenchy was her best friend and that his clothes made her feel good about herself. It made him feel the same way. He said she wasn't just a muse, but an inspiration for everything he did. Audrey Hepburn's choice to play Eliza Doolittle in the 1964 movie version of My Fair Lady is still one of the most debated choices made in Hollywood. In October 1963, Jack Warner, who was in charge of Warner Brothers Studios, and they said something that shocked everyone. When My Fair Lady was made into a movie, Audrey Hepburn would play Eliza Doolittle. At first glance, this may not seem crazy, but here's why it was. Julie Andrews had played this part on Broadway an amazing 2,717 times over the course of 7 years, making it very much her own. Everyone just thought she would be in the movie, especially since her Broadway co-star Rex Harrison was already set to play Professor Henry Higgins again. Warner, on the other hand, had other ideas. They were all about making money. He wanted a well-known movie star because the movie cost $17 million, which is about $150 million today. At the time, Hepburn was 34 years old. She had already won an Oscar for Roman Holiday and been a big hit in movies like Sabrina and Breakfast at Tiffany's. Warner had a simple reason: very business and harsh. He said that people knew who Audrey Hepburn was in even the smallest towns in the United States and other countries. There was an instant and harsh backlash, something that had never happened before, not even in Hollywood. Fans were so angry about Warner's choice that they bought an expensive full-page ad in Variety magazine to say how wrong it was. Alan J. Lerner, who wrote the show's songs, was so angry that he wrote to Andrews privately to say that the choice was so stupid that he couldn't even think about it. It got so much pressure on Hepburn that she got so nervous that she thought about dropping out of the part. Here's where the story gets funny, though. Now that Julie Andrews wasn't busy with My Fair Lady, she played the lead in Disney's Mary Poppins. In the end, this turned out to be a good thing. A lot of people loved Mary Poppins, and Andrews won the Oscar for Best Actress. During a funny moment, she thanked Jack Warner, who made everything possible while getting her award. Things didn't end there. Hepburn worked hard to prepare for the part because she wanted to show her enemies they were wrong, including months of taking music lessons every day. She didn't know it at the time, but the studio had already chosen to replace her singing voice with Marni Nixon's. Hepburn was devastated when she found out about this just 3 months before the movie's release. She is said to have cried in her dressing room. She had practiced for hours and hours, sometimes up to 12 hours a day, because she thought her voice would be used. The last hit was during award season. Even though My Fair Lady won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, and was nominated for 12 more, Hepburn wasn't even considered for Best Actress. She had to give the Best Actor award to her co-star Rex Harrison at the event, which made it even worse. It hurt even more because Julie Andrews was a famous singer because of Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, while Hepburn's musical skills were still up for question. This slight hurt Hepburn a lot. She won an Oscar for Roman Holiday in 1954, but she would only be nominated for one more award, for Wait Until Dark in 1967. There was so much debate that the Los Angeles Times put a story about it on the front page, named The Audrey Hepburn Oscar Mystery, and an anonymous member of the Academy told the harsh truth. "We don't think she did a bad job. We just don't think she should have been doing the job." Audrey Hepburn, on the other hand, had a life full of love, sadness, and unforgettable events. She was 24 years old when she worked on the movie Sabrina in 1954, and fell in love with William Holden, one of her co-stars. Holden was 35 years old, married, and had 2 kids. They got along so well, both on and off the screen. They met in secret on the set and in Holden's dressing room to keep their relationship a secret. Holden told Audrey that he loved her so much that he wanted to leave his wife Artis and marry her. Things changed, though. Audrey was upset when she learned that Holden had a vasectomy and couldn't have kids. Audrey had always wanted to have a child, so this broke her heart. The end of their relationship was August 17, 1954. Both of them were hurt. After many years, Holden told me Audrey was the love of my life. They worked together again on the 1964 movie Paris when it sizzles. His drinking got worse, and he ended up in the hospital while shooting. Their past had changed them both in deep ways. A British investor named James Hansen proposed to Audrey, which changed the course of her love life. When they met in 1951, Audrey was 22 years old, and they quickly became engaged, just like in a fairy tale. In early 1952, she started making plans for a big wedding. In Rome, she even had the famous Fontana sisters make her a dress. But as the wedding day got near, Audrey saw that they would have to spend time apart because of their busy lives. Just a few days before the wedding was meant to happen, she changed her mind. She asked the Fontana sisters to give her dress to a bride who didn't have enough money to buy one. Who was that bride? Amabile Altabella wore the dress to her wedding on September 25, 1952. Audrey said that she wasn't sure what she wanted in a romance at the time because she was too young. Audrey married actor and director Mel Ferrer in 1954. She met him at a party that Gregory Peck was setting up. They got married in Switzerland without anyone knowing. She wore a beautiful Pierre Balmain t-shirt dress. There was a lot of worry in Hollywood about their relationship. Mel was 12 years older than Audrey and had been divorced twice. She seemed to have a lot of power over Audrey's decisions. He talked her out of parts in important movies like The Diary of Anne Frank. During their marriage, they worked together on 9 movies, but some people thought that his power stifled her career. Audrey stayed loyal to him even though things got hard, and she even supported their relationship in interviews. They were married for 14 years, but by 1968, the stress was too much for them, and they split up. Audrey later said that Mel helped her feel good about herself as an actor, even though their relationship had some rough spots. Audrey's heartbreaking losses put her dream of having a child to the test. She lost several babies between 1967 and 1972. She had her first miscarriage while she was shooting War and Peace. In 1959, while making The Unforgiven, there was another loss. After 7 months of pregnancy, Audrey had a stillbirth in 1965. It was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. She got really sad and had to spend time away from people to heal. She never gave up on her dream, though. Sean was her first boy, born in 1960. After she married Andrea Doody, she had her second son, Luca, in 1970. Audrey's life was changed by these events, which led her to work for UNICEF, where she became a strong supporter of moms and children. She also dated John F. Kennedy for a short time when she was 25 years old, in 1954. He was a young senator. They met at a party that Gregory Peck was throwing, and they hit it off right away. They met in secret and had a short time together, but they both knew it wouldn't last. Kennedy got married, and Audrey's job was really taking off. They broke up at a beach house in Malibu, where they had their last meeting. Audrey was very sad when John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963, and didn't do anything for a week to mourn. She talked about her time with Kennedy years later as something that would always be with her. In 1967, Audrey Hepburn did something that all of us were shocked by. She was at the top of her game, millions of people loved her, and she had been in hit movies like Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and My Fair Lady. She gave up everything she had won, including an Oscar and other big awards. She quit Hollywood when she was 38 years old to spend more time with her family. Audrey's heart had been broken by several losses, and she realized she couldn't work and be a mother at the same time. So she picked family over fame. Audrey got away from the attention of Hollywood stars. She bought a quiet house in Switzerland and spent most of her time raising her son Sean, who was born in 1960. This was important to her. As a kid, Audrey had a hard time. She lived through the terrible events of World War II and her father leaving the family. She wanted to give Sean the love and security she never had. The movies in Hollywood were also changing at the same time. It was all about gritty, realistic movies these days, and Audrey's classy style didn't fit in with that. She became a timeless symbol of old Hollywood beauty by stepping out of the spotlight at this point. In 1969, a few years later, Audrey fell in love again. Andrea Doody is an Italian doctor whom she married after meeting him on a cruise in the Mediterranean. She thought he could give her the safe family life she wanted even though he was 9 years younger than her. They got married in Switzerland, far from all the attention in Hollywood. Audrey had her second boy, Luca, the next year when she was 40 years old. Her hard work seemed to have paid off. Her family was the most important thing to her, and she now had the family she had always wanted. Not everything was great, though. He wasn't with her much because of work, and their lives were very different. Audrey, who used to be Hollywood's sweetheart, got used to living in Rome, where things were calmer. But Andrea thought she should be a typical Italian wife, which made things awkward. Andrea's cheating on her was the next thing that hurt her very badly. During their marriage, he had many romances. They even took pictures of him with a lot of women while Audrey was away. One time, Audrey's maid told her that Andrea had been seeing other women while she was away, right in their own home. It hurt her heart. When she told her oldest son Sean that Andrea had lied to her, she was crying. Aubrey also had to deal with cheating in her first marriage to Mel Ferrer. Even though they got married in 1954, there were reports of affairs about them for many years. Mel was bossy, and they were both cheating on each other. Audrey was seeing her co-star Peter Finch, and Mel was seeing other women. Because of these issues, they got a divorce in 1968. She tried to get back into acting in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but things were different. People wanted different types of stories now that Hollywood had changed. She played an older girl named Marion in the 1976 movie Robin and Marion, which starred Sean Connery. People who saw it liked it, but it didn't do well at the box office. In 1979, she was in Bloodline, a thriller with dark themes that was very different from the light, sweet movies she was known for. During shooting, she told her co-star Ben Gazzara about her problems in her marriage, and the two of them had a short affair. When she was in They All Laughed in 1987, not many people had seen it. Audrey knew that her time in Hollywood was over for good. Her last movie part was in Steven Spielberg's 1989 movie Always. Schauberg wrote a small but important scene just for her where she played an angel. It was a kind and classy way to leave the world of movies. After that, Audrey quit acting for good and focused on doing good deeds for other people, making that her life's work. Her job as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador began in 1988. In just 5 years, she went to more than 50 different places. Due to war and weather, children in Ethiopia were going hungry on her first trip. She did nothing but talks every day to get people to care about these kids. While there was a civil war in Sudan in 1989, she went there to see the camps where people had fled to safety. Audrey went to a lot of places like Kenya, Guatemala, Vietnam, and Somalia. She always tried to help kids who were in trouble, no matter where she went. In 1992, she insisted on going to Somalia even though she was sick with cancer. During the war, she went to dangerous places and thanked troops for their service. Because she was brave and kind, everyone who met her was moved. Audrey never used her fame to push herself. She used it to show everyone what kids needed instead. She told him, "I'm not interested in promoting Audrey Hepburn these days," after her trip to Ethiopia. "I'd like to tell everyone how they can help Ethiopia." She spoke at events, met with leaders, and worked with the media to get the word out about UNICEF. She even walked with kids in Vietnam to bring attention to their problems. She was captured giving polio shots in Bangladesh, which made a lot of people want to back efforts to vaccinate. She did good things with her fame, and her hard work made a real difference in the lives of children. Audrey became interested in UNICEF because of her own youth. During World War II, she grew up and went through the time when Germany ruled the Netherlands. Her family and she ate grass and flower bulbs to stay alive during the 1944 winter of hunger. After the war, she got food and medical care from the organization that came before UNICEF. She always said that getting help saved her life. She now wants to help other people the same way she did. As part of her projects, she would visit kids and say, "I know how you feel." Because of this, her work with UNICEF was very personal and important to her. Audrey became even more dedicated to UNICEF in her last years. She learned she had cancer in 1992. She went to Somalia for one last task, even though she was very sick. A war was going on in Somalia, and many kids were going hungry. Even though it was dangerous, Audrey wouldn't back out of the trip. She thanked the soldiers for their help and said that their kindness gave her hope. She kept working for UNICEF after she got back home, giving talks and getting money. She got the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her work in December 1992. Audrey died in January 1993, but her message was still clear. People who have something should give something to people who don't have anything. Her life showed what it means to be kind, brave, and in love.